break with me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Look, day 2 of minicamp. There was one thing that was constantly repeated throughout the course of the day by the players that were interviewed, and that was Eric Bieniemy's exclamation to the offense, "Get off the field." Okay? He kicked the offense off the field today because they weren't executing at the level that he thought they should have been executing. They weren't hustling the way that he demanded that they do it, and he kicked them off the field. And a lot of players took notice of that today. It was one of the bigger topics of conversation today. Bieniemy continues to dominate the conversation. His energy is infectious. Look, not everyone is cool with being yelled at. Understand that, a lot of people come up from the old school and the mentality is, hey, tough coaching, tough love is what gets it done. And I'm all for that, but not everybody is coached the same way. And I've explained this before. We've talked about the psychology of this in past episodes and things of that nature. Some guys you need to put your arm around and tell them, hey, this is what I need from you. Some guys you pull them off to the side. They don't want to be embarrassed in front of the entire group. Others, you can yell at them, scream at them at the top of your lungs, 6 inches from their face, and they're absolutely fine with that. Not everyone is the same, okay? With that said, this is a breath of fresh air. It's something that this team has needed, going all the way back to the Jay Gruden days. When Jay Gruden was allowing, his players to give him purple nurples and wet willies. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? So this is the kind of structure that this team has yearned for. Terry even said it, at the presser. Like, we want to be coached harder. This team is starving for a winner. Eric Bieniemy brings that pedigree. That's the thing, is you can't get away with this if you don't have the hardware that Eric Bieniemy has. If you don't have the ability to say, hey, this is what works. He's got that DNA. He's got the ability to say, hey, this is how we did it in Kansas City. And that's going to allow people to follow him with the, mindset of this is going to lead us where we ultimately want to go. So that was a big topic of discussion today. Get off the field, okay? Offense being kicked off the field by assistant head coach, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. But just like yesterday, and it'll be the same tomorrow, a slew of players and coaches stepped up to the microphone. 9 in total again today, same as yesterday's number. 8 players, 1 coach. Rivera was the alone coach. I think we'll hear from probably both of the coordinators tomorrow. If not, maybe one of them, and, a slew of players yet again. And I like the mixture. I told you, you're not going to hear from these guys as often, once we get into the thick of things. So it's good to hear from them now. And so we're going to go through what was said by each of these players, talk about what their roles could potentially be in the upcoming season, what their offseason was like, how they feel like they're better, things of that nature. Talk about the progress of this football team and, what some of the guys are saying. So let's start with Rivera. One of the topics that arose at the very beginning of his presser dealt with the conditions. I don't know if you went outside your house today. I don't know where you live. But if you're on the East Coast, you're dealing with the remnants of these fires that have been happening. I think they started over in Canada, whatever the case may be. I went outside. It stunk. And I've been in situations, being in VA, we've got a swamp, the dismal swamp that's here in Virginia. One time it caught on fire. I don't know if, some of you were aware of that, but it caught on fire once. And it was the worst. The air quality was terrible for like a week and a half. And it smells awful. It's hard to breathe. The air is thick. So I can only imagine what that's like further north, right? The further north you go, New York is just terrible right now. The closer you get to that Canadian border, the worse off the conditions are. And so they're dealing with a bit of remnants from that. Like I said, I went out of my house this morning to take the kids to daycare, and it smelled terrible. And so it was a little thicker. The air was a little thicker. I could smell it. I could taste it a little bit. It took me back to those days of when the Dismal Swamp was on fire, and it was the worst. So I can only imagine what those players were dealing with, but they were able to practice outside. The conditions weren't bad enough to where they needed to go inside the bubble, but that could change tomorrow. But they were practicing outside today. So that was one of the first topics of discussion. Ron, talked about a number of different things. Chase Young came up again. They asked him, how did he look? Because remember, Ron's pressers are usually prior to practice. So they didn't talk to him after he had seen Chase and laid eyes on him for the first time since the end of last season. And so they asked him, how did Chase look? He said he looked fantastic. And he talked about him and Montez Sweat and his defensive line and what they could potentially be if everybody's healthy and they perform at the level that they're fully capable of, and what that could mean for this team, this defense, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, a lot of things to be excited about there. And Ron seems to think that they look really good, they being Chase and Montez Sweat. I think, he talked about a couple of different other topics that I don't think anything necessarily resonated with what he was talking about. I don't think he said anything of the utmost importance, towards the back end of his presser. But as you move on, Montez Sweat spoke. I told you that he would probably be speaking in the next day or two because they talked to Chase Young. So naturally, Montez would be up next. And remember, I gave credit yesterday to Daron Payne for his growth and maturation. But Sweat has really come a long way. He was worse than Daron. When he first got here, it was 1-2 word answers. He was very uncomfortable. You could tell he wanted no parts of it. He was never really truly standoffish with the media, but you could tell that, one wrong, question could set him off potentially. Man, he's been great. He's really, really getting comfortable. I think he's starting to really get used to the media members, and he's lightening up, and it helps when they're not asking dumbass questions. That also helps too, which you generally don't get this time of the year. But he was great. A lot of laughing from him. I don't know if I've ever seen him laugh this many times at a presser. He talked about, goals for the season. He said, look, Daron showed me the blueprint last year. He showed me how to get to the bag. I'm looking to go get it myself. And they asked him, so, then you get the questions. Well, Jack talked about finishing, and he said it before anybody could bring it up. I got to finish. So we know that conversation took place between he and Jack or Ron or whatever the case may be. And he said, yeah, that's what I worked on all offseason, finishing. And they said, well, so how do you finish? He's like, get his ass on the ground. But, he later expounded upon that. They kept probing, and he was like, just, different things that I have to do. He said, look, I don't have any issues getting to the quarterback, which he's not wrong. He had 28 quarterback pressures last year, right? He had a significant number. That's not his problem. His problem is finishing. Like, I think about the Tennessee Titans game. He had 2 sacks in that game that he didn't get that cost us. There was a 3rd down that was converted, and it was the 76-yarder to the receiver that ended up being the game-winning touchdown. Like, he's got to finish. And if he can do that, he's going to get to the bag because, like he said, he's had no problems in his career getting to the quarterback. It's just getting guys on the ground and being consistent in doing that. So, Tez is like, look, we motivate each other. He feeds off of Chase's energy, and Chase feeds off of his energy. He knows that they're competing for maybe one contract, but he's like, that's not going to stop us from rooting the other on. At the end of the day, we're going to go out, put our best foot forward, and we're going to see what happens. But he's like, I'm not really thinking about the contract. I know what's at stake. I know what I got to do. I'm just out here enjoying it with my brothers, man. And he's like, the difference between, me working out away from the team and working with the team, he said the biggest difference is just being here with your bros, man. Like, I really enjoy their company. I really, miss these dudes. I like being out here. But, he also loves his family time. Remember, he just had a daughter last year. I don't even think she's 1 yet. He talked about it. I think it was like a year or 2 ago. His grandfather had, a birthday party, and he was like, I don't know how many more of these he's going to have. Like, he likes spending time with his family, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, long story short, Tez is locked in, and he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. So, And from all accounts, everyone's saying that they look fantastic, both he and Chase, to this point. Jahan Dotson spoke, and I think he's poised for a breakout season. And his biggest the biggest takeaway I have from what he had to say was this offense is going to be way more explosive. And something that Jahan brought up that at least two different people brought up today, and somebody brought it up yesterday. I didn't mention it, and then I heard someone bring it up like 2 weeks ago, is the screen game. And we talked about it briefly on one of the channels, or one of the videos rather, about I think somebody had said something about the screen game on one of the live streams, and we talked about it briefly. But this is something that continues to come up, man. This screen game thing is real. It has legs. I think we're going to see the screen game a bit more this year. And what everyone's saying is it's not just the receivers, it's not just the running backs. Tight ends are getting involved in the screen game as well. You know what I was thinking about when I was hearing about screens and things of that nature? When's the last time we made a tackle eligible and threw him the football? Like, you see all the teams with explosive offenses get into the red zone, get tricky and get creative. The Chiefs were one of the best in the league at getting creative, right? They would do all sorts of things. They would make up plays. We heard all the stories about, oh man, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes made this play up last week, and they brought it to the coaching staff. They thought it was excellent. They put it into the game plan. We saw them playing like ring around the rosies. They're spinning around in the huddle, and they sprint to the line of scrimmage and snap the ball. Like, I wonder if we're going to see creative things like that. I don't know if we're going to see things like that or not. But the screen game, I think, is going to be a lot bigger this year than it has been in past years. And again, execution is key. We tried to run screens last year, and we're horrible at it. So it wasn't for a lack of trying last year. We just weren't very good at it. Better offensive linemen, more athletic offensive linemen, better playmakers will help in that capacity. I think will be, and better scheming as well will help with that. And I think we'll see all of those things kind of come together. And I think our screen game it can't be any worse, right? It can't be any worse than it was last year. We had to be the worst screen team in football last year. Can't be any worse. So I expect it to be a lot better. But Jahan talked about the explosiveness of this offense and what it could be. He talked about EB's, presence and what his impact has been. He said, look, EB pulled me aside. I ran into him yesterday, and he said, look, man, I see the potential in you. I know what you're capable of, and I'm going to get every ounce of it out of you. And he's like, that's what you want out of a coach. He's like, I'm so glad that he's here, and I'm happy to call him my offensive coordinator. So the impact that EB has had, it's amazing. He hasn't called a game as an offensive coordinator in this league without Andy Reid, right? So everyone thinks that all the success, most of it is Andy Reid's doing, which is why he hasn't gotten a head coaching job. That's at least how I see it. We're going to see what EB's identity is as an offensive coordinator. We haven't seen a single snap of that yet, and the impact has been profound already. So not just the energy, but the confidence that he's instilling in these players, right? Just going up to Jahan and just something as simple as, hey, I see your potential. I see how great you can be, and I'm going to get it all out of you. That sometimes that's all a guy needs to hear, right? So, Jahan also talked about the limitless potential of this offense, which is what I've been talking about for much of the offseason. He's like, man, look, when I tell you we're talented, we're talented. The receiver room is talented. He's like, look, first of all, our defense is ridiculous. Right? If this offense can put up points, we're going to be tough to deal with. And we got the receivers. We got the running backs. We got the tight ends. We got the quarterbacks. We got the talent to make this thing happen. Now we just got to go out and get it done. And, like yesterday, I talked about what Cole Turner talked about, being a rookie last year and just this never-ending process, right? You go from the end of the regular season in college football and you're straight into getting ready for the combine, preparing for the combine. Right after the combine, it's pro days. Right after the pro days, it's these 30 visits, these top 30 visits from all these clubs. After that, It's the draft. After the draft, you're straight into rookie mini camps. Right after the rookie mini camps, you're straight into OTAs and the vet mini camps. And then you finally get to breathe, and before you know it, boom, you're right in for training camp. And it's 18 weeks. You've never played that much football in your life. College is usually 12, 13 weeks. You don't make the playoffs. It's 11 or 12 weeks. And so he was like, it was 18 regular season weeks. It was all of that stuff that we dealt with in the offseason. It was training camp, and then 18 weeks. It was grueling. He said, this year, I am so much more prepared, and I am so ready. And my body's ready. I'm more mentally locked in. I know exactly what I need to do. I know how to take care of my body better. And these are the things that you really don't take into consideration. When you think about players, you're just thinking about on-field production. Did we get a better quarterback? Is the offensive line better? But you don't think about these players individually. What did they do in the offseason? What did they learn from last year that they can bring to this season and make themselves individually better? Because as each player gets better individually and they come together as a whole, it makes the team that much better as a whole. Speaking of which, Benjamin St-Juste is the next guy I'm going to. And I told you yesterday, there are certain guys on this team that are extremely thoughtful, that you're going to get more out of them than talking to, say, Daron Payne or Montez Sweat or someone like that. Sadiq Charles, who's not used to doing interviews, who they spoke to today. I say that Benjamin St-Juste, Terry McLaurin, Charles Leno Jr. is another one. Bobby McCain was like that, which is why I really rocked with Bobby. We've got several guys on the roster, though, now. Terry and Benjamin St-Juste, I think, lead the charge. Sadiq and Charles Leno Jr. isn't that far behind. You've got some guys that you're going to get extra out of them. They're going to tell you how they feel. They're going to speak their mind. Logan Thomas is another one. I think a great soundbite when you hear from Logan. He's usually going to be very direct and tell you exactly how he feels. So Juice stepped up, and he was fantastic today. And he talked about the difference between this year and last year, and how he's, and remember I made a joke yesterday about how, Derek Forrest, who's in his third year, was talking about being a veteran now and showing the young guys and being more vocal. And I'm like, dude's only been here for 3 years. But that's the life in the NFL. After you're no longer a rookie, you're considered a vet. You know what I mean? Now you're showing rookies how to do things. You've only been here 2 years yourself, but they're looking at you like, hey, what's going on here? What do I do? And you can give them information and knowledge because you've been through what they're going through. And he's like, yo, I'm going into year 3 and I'm a vet now. I'm looking at these rookies. They're wide-eyed and I'm helping them out and I'm giving them tips. I've been in this defense for 3 years now. I'm super comfortable. And here's the thing that I didn't really take into consideration when thinking about Juice, because I keep saying this like a broken record. Oh, man, he played in the slot last year and he was okay. He wasn't terrible. But I'm like, he wasn't great either. I saw him get cooked in the slot a number of times where the pass just wasn't there. And if it was a better ball, he's beaten, right, on that particular snap. And so I was like, I prefer my Juice on the outside. But he made something abundantly clear to me that I didn't consider. And this is why listening to these guys is so important. He's like, look, last year, they moved me inside. And, part of the reason they drafted me, because this was part of the, conversation when they selected me, was, hey, we love your versatility. We love the fact that you can play inside or outside. But they really didn't do that with him in his first year. It was really last year where he got that exposure inside because of William Jackson III and what they were doing with Kendall Fuller and things of that nature. And so he said last year he was really just learning the nuances, and it was a lot for him to process. Inside, outside, there's so many different route combinations, so many different things you have to look for. Obviously, when you're a boundary corner, there's the aid of out of bounds. There's no out of bounds. This is why a lot of corners will tell you inside is a whole different, atmosphere. It's a whole different animal, and not everybody's up to that challenge. And he's like, yeah, last year, it was a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. He said, but I'm so much more prepared for that now. He's like, I felt like I played well last year inside. I'm so far more advanced than where I was a year ago. Route concepts, this defense, what they're asking of me, inside, outside, it doesn't matter. I'm equally as comfortable now inside or out. So he said these interchangeable parts that we now have with Quan Martin, myself, it's really going to make this defense, that much harder to deal with. And he was like, look, And Juice, I told you, he was one of the few guys that spoke out about management and ownership last year. And he was like, look, it's a buzz, man. This is different. He's like, this season feels different because he's like, in practice, last year the route combinations weren't as diverse. He's like, I told you the offense was predictable, right? A lot of shallow, everything started with the mesh, right? Like our whole offense, the base and the foundation of our offense under Scott Turner was the mesh concepts, right? And everything kind of flowed off of that. And it felt so, predictable a lot of times. But he's like, look, a lot of this shit we've never seen before. Like, so many different route combinations. He's like, certain situations were predictable last year from an offensive standpoint with our offense. This year, he's like, it's 3rd and short, and it's a 40-yard pass going over our head, and you're not expecting that, right? And so he's like, this is the opportunity that we have this year, and why it feels so different. He's like, every team you see in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, they can score points. They scoring 35, they scoring 38. He said, we got to be able to do that if we want to win and make the postseason. And Jahan said, and I didn't mention this when I was talking about Jahan, but he said, I expect to make the playoffs this year. Like, it's a different vibe. We're not hoping anymore. Guys expect this team to take that next step this year. And back to Benjamin, who, said, look, this offense is dynamic, man. We got weapons. And I look at this offense now with EB leading the charge, and I expect us to score points. And he's like, if you're not scoring points, then you got to have a top 3 elite defense. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the defense is striving for. But he's like, we got to score points. And I think we got the unit now. We got the group here this year to do it. I couldn't agree more. Right? So Juice is all in. And, again, he's like, man, we got so many weapons in the secondary this year. It's crazy. We got so much versatility. Guys can go inside, outside. He's like, Forbes is coming in here and he's making plays. And whether they want Forbes to stay outside because he's more comfortable, or they got me outside, or they got me inside, or they take Forbes inside, or they put Quan Martin inside. He's like, Quan can blitz. Quan can play out inside. He can do so many different things. He said, we got a chance to be really special. It's something special this year. I'm just telling y'all what they're saying. Look, you know how I feel, okay? But the players are saying it, right? And you can say, well, this is what the players say they don't say this every year. I don't say this every year. I said it last year. A lot of y'all love to play that game. He says this every year. Louie's hyping his team up every year. No, I don't. I did last year. Guilty as charged. You got me. Hands up. All right? But I wasn't saying that this feels different all last year in the offseason. I told you after week 1, this feels different. When we beat Jacksonville, I very specifically and vividly remember coming on and saying, guys, we would have lost this game in past years. This feels different. That was the first time I felt like I said, this feels different. Now, maybe I said it in the offseason last year, and that's very possible, okay? But I can assure you, I didn't say that in 2021. I can assure you, I didn't say that in 2020, okay? I can assure you the team wasn't saying that because Daniel Snyder's ass wasn't gone and EB wasn't here. In the talent level, and this is what I've also been talking about. We can talk about Snyder. We can talk about EB. I've also told you, we're talented. Now, we're not the best roster in football. Don't get it misconstrued. But we're talented. More talented than we've been in a very long time. Understand that. Okay? Off of sheer talent, we should be able to outpoint teams just off of sheer talent this year. But, again, you got to go out and execute, which is why EB, get off the field. This is why you... Let me explain something to you. Anybody that's ever been in a position of authority, all right? We've all been kids at some point in our lives. None of us came out of the womb 35 years old. We all were kids. And I can tell you how I operated as a kid. And I can tell you, having been in positions of power or seen others in positions of power, I can tell you how it's best utilized. As a person in a position of power, it is much easier to come in, with the hammer slammed down, right? Than to come in wanting to be everybody's friend and wanting to be nice and gentle and soft, and then later on trying to crack the whip. Because once that's the equivalent of that would, in a great analogy or a great example of that, would be Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden came in here and we were all expecting this rowdy, rah-rah, very stern coach, the guy we saw on Hard Knocks cussing his players out when he was the offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. We did not get that. All right, we got a guy that had loosey-goosey practices, a lack of structure, and guys were calling him out, DJ Swearinger, to the point where he was cut, right? Because DJ Swearinger kept calling him out for not having tough enough practices, right? A guy that came from New England that had seen what, it was supposed to look like, is like, this isn't good enough, right? And so you can't then, after being soft, try to get mad and upset. Now you want to be stern with the players. They don't respect that because we know you soft for real. All right, you soft like drugstore cotton. Get out of my face. I was once a part of a class that made a teacher cry. Looking back on it, I feel bad about that, right? But she came in soft, trying to be our friends, and then when shit didn't go her way, now she wanted to get all rowdy, and we like, you're not about that life. Stop, okay? Stop. We know who you are. Okay? You've already shown your true colors. When you're dealing with men, a lot of times they're just looking for sheer honesty. Where do I stand? All right? But if you really want people to respect you, you come in and you lay the law down immediately. They may not like you initially, but they will learn to respect you, and then you can ease up. You can pull the reins back a bit once you've gotten them to do things the way you want it to be done, and then they start to like you. But respect is what you need to demand first before you start making friends, okay? A lot of times people ask, which is better to have, respect or fear? All right? And that's a really good question, all right? You want people to respect you. Fear is a motivating factor, right? But respect is something that you have to earn. You come in and you get people's attention immediately, and that's what EB's doing, and it's having an impact. Get off the field, okay? It's having an impact. Because again, when we get to August, when we get to September, it's these types of moments like today that are going to have them ready to kick somebody's ass and win a game, and not just, beat somebody 17-15, right? Now we looking to crush somebody's larynx, all right? Now we got the stamina in the fourth quarter because EB was pushing them in early June and late May. Now we got the stamina to put our foot on somebody's neck and crush their windpipe, or we got the stamina to step on that gas and pull away from somebody that's trying to keep up with us, that in past years would have been right there, if not in front of us. That's the impact of an EB. And you're hearing guys like Benjamin St-Juste and Jahan Dotson kind of hammer that point home. John Bates, same thing. He's like, yo, he's got us running routes as tight ends I haven't seen since I got in the league. So, Bates is excited about the opportunity that's being presented to them. And he's like, yeah, this is different. Bates said, he literally said those words, this is different, okay? Like, I can't make this stuff up. I know a lot of y'all keep thinking I'm being extra and I'm hyping this up. The players are saying this. I can say it all I want, but the players are saying it. It's different. John Bates is like, the energy is different. EB has brought accountability. That's what you hear over and over again. I think Charles Leno said the word accountability like 57 times in his presser today. All right. So, and I told you that's what Mahomes' message was. He used the word accountability. Every time he talked about EB, he used the word accountability at least 5 times. If he had 3 sentences, he was using the word accountability like 7 times in 3 sentences. Like, we know that's the thing that EB is going to do, if nothing else. He's going to hold everybody accountable. So, Chris Paul talked about this opportunity that he's getting. Obviously, he's not starting right now. He's not penciled in as the starter, but he is right there. And that was something Ron did say, and I meant to mention this. But he said Chris Paul is nipping right at Sadiq Charles's heels, whatever that means, right? Again, nothing that the offensive line has done right now, I think you can take, too much stock into it because, again, the pads aren't on. So I can't really imagine anybody doing anything to make them necessarily stand out this time of the year. But you don't want to be doing anything that's a negative either, right? So Paul is like, look, I'm so much further along in my process than I was last year. Obviously, rookie, 7th round pick, head spinning, just trying to find a way to make the roster, stay above water. This year, feel a lot more comfortable about where I am, how much I've grown and learned. And I really feel like that Week 18 experience against Dallas really helped me, gave me some film to be able to, critique and look at things that I need to get better at. And now here we are, and I really feel like things are moving in the right direction. So we'll see what happens at that left guard spot. Speaking of left guard, Sadiq Charles, who is right now penciled in as the starting left guard, also spoke to the media, and he talked about his body and the changes that he's made, because one of the things we've talked about with Sadiq Charles is injuries. This is a thing that has been a constant source of frustration with him since he got drafted. And shout out to my guy, Red Wing 01. He got me straight, because I told you yesterday, I said, I think Sadiq had an opportunity to start at left tackle in his rookie season, and he was like, nah, that was always Jaron Christian's job in Sadiq's rookie season in 2020. And so he never really had a chance. So when Ron said yesterday that this is Sadiq's real first opportunity at being a starter, like with the job being essentially handed to him in camp and saying, hey, keep it, this is literally his first opportunity to get the first crack at being a starter. So he said, look, I've been here all offseason. I've been working with the nutrition staff. I've been working with the weight and conditioning staff. I'm eating better. I'm in better shape. I'm taking better care of my body. I'm training differently. I'm training specific muscle groups. I feel stronger than I've ever felt before. I feel better. I've learned so many different lessons, and I'm at a specific position. I'm comfortable, and now I'm ready to go out and prove everybody right. So we're going to see. He's like, I got to prove it to myself. I got to prove it to my teammates. I got to prove it to this coaching staff. I got to prove that I belong, and I'm looking to do that this year. I'm happy for Sadiq getting this opportunity. Now I want to see what he does with it, because this is it. It's a make-or-break year for him. This is his last year of his rookie deal. He doesn't get it done this year. He won't be doing it in Washington after this season, if he's going to do it at all. So I'm rooting for him, hoping he plays well enough to garner a contract here, and then we go from there. But he's going to have to stay healthy. That's number one, and he knows that. And he said, I've worked on my body. I've worked on my nutrition. I've done a lot of things to put myself in a much better position to be healthy, to be able to give myself the best chance to compete at a high level this upcoming season. Again, another guy putting in the work, doing the things that he needs to do to give himself a fighting chance to make an impact on this football team. Charles Leno, again, veteran, a guy that you can count on. He talked about the depth of this roster, specifically on the offensive line. He's like, yeah, we real deep this year. And I talked about that. The emphasis that was put on the offensive line, and shout out to the staff, right? Benjamin St-Juste said this. He was like, look, the staff knew what we needed. Like, they went out and they did all the things that people have been saying we needed to clean up. They went and cleaned up those things. The biggest thing was the offensive line. Look at all the moves that you may not believe in the offensive line. You may need to see proof. I do too. I told you that the one thing on offense right now that worries me, it's not Sam Howell. It's not the tight end position. Definitely isn't the running backs or the receivers. All right. It's the offensive line. So I'm in the same boat as you if you don't necessarily believe in the offensive line. I don't necessarily doubt them as much as just show me. All right. I just need to see it. All right. However, there's depth. Now, how good is the depth? I can tell you it's not last year's depth. We're not riding with a bunch of 30-somethings out here and hoping that they get it done. We got young boys across the line. Nobody's 30-something across the entire offensive line outside of Charles Leno Jr. Everybody else is in their 20s. Everybody's young, fresh, spry, and looking for an opportunity to prove themselves in this league. So this is a different offensive line than last year. And then bringing in Trenton Scott, again, he's not a great player, but he's more depth, another body out there if you have to do it. We know what we're getting out of Cole Luke. He's been really solid. Ron praised him and said, hey, he stepped in when, Charles Leno was out this entire camp, or offseason rather. he stepped in and we didn't miss a beat. And we know what we can get out of Cole, so we're not even worried about him. But, you know, Braden Daniels being brought in, obviously bringing in Nick Gates and bringing in Andrew Wiley were big acquisitions. Also drafting Ricky Stromberg. They've made a ton of changes. And Ron even went as far as saying, hey, Tyler Larson, we were 6-6-1 with Tyler Larson. Like, that's a big stat. Like, we threw that number around. If you recall last year, I told you there was a video where I said the biggest piece of this team is Tyler Larson. Because when he's in the lineup, we win football games. So even Ron acknowledged that. Like, we go all the way to our third center and we feel good, right? So the depth is something Leno talked about. He's like, yo, we deep. We deep everywhere. And he's like, this year, I feel like offensively, we've got the dogs, we've got the horses, we got the play caller, and he couldn't stop talking about EB. He couldn't stop talking about accountability and what EB brings to the table. Get off the field! He couldn't stop talking about EB kicking him off the field and how he loved that because we haven't had that in Washington, right? So, again, EB effect and everyone just feeling this energy that I've been talking about permeating this building. Again, these guys are telling you firsthand, it's different, all right? And then Joey Sly. He's a sly guy. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I just said, look, I don't want anything else from Joey other than, hey, when they send you out there to make a kick, make your kick, bro. That's it. They send you out there to kick the ball off, kick it out the back of the end zone. I ain't asking for much from Joey. And so the big question that they asked Joey was, bro, are you getting competition this year? Are they bringing somebody to camp? Did they tell you that there's going to be? He's like, look, man, I don't know what they're going to do, but every day I'm competing against myself. That was his thing, was like, look, I don't know what they're going to do, but I just got to go out and be the best version of myself. He said this is the first real offseason that I've gotten a chance to work with Cheese and with Tress, and so I feel really good about that. So we'll find out exactly what Joey Sly is made of. He wasn't terrible last year, but he missed some kicks last year. Like, he missed a number of extra points. He missed some chip shots, but he also hit some bombs, something we're not used to in Washington. So if he could just put it all together, I think we got ourselves a kicker. I like Joey. I don't love Joey. I want Joey to make me love him. Make me love you, Joey. Come on, man. Make me love you, bro. Right now, I just like Joey. Joey, make me love you, man. Make your kicks. So that's day 2 in a nutshell, man. Again, a lot of good information from these players. I look forward to hearing from another group of guys tomorrow. Hopefully, they're able to stay outside. If the conditions outside get any worse, they're gonna have to go inside and practice in the bubble. But we'll see what happens. In any event, that's gonna do it for me. Your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Y'all know what it is. All right, post up and take command. I'm coachable. A lot of y'all keep saying, hey, you got to salute with your right hand. Well, the mic was in the way. I couldn't salute with the right hand. But now that I've moved the mic out of the way, I've got space, I'm coachable, okay? Saluting with the right hand, all right? So that's progress, okay? So in any event, enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll be back tomorrow night live and in color. Don't diss the man or we'll bum rush your mother for the Command Post Live. Y'all know what it is. Until then, you guys have a good one. Take care.
LouieTeeNetwork.